Welcome back. All right, so we're going to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins. I talked about Minnesota earlier. This will take me down to, I think it's just two more teams I have to talk about, and then this part is done, and then I start talking about teams that got knocked out of the playoffs. I want to get this series done, and then we'll talk about prospects because the draft's coming up, and we got other things to discuss as well. So, yeah, we're going to talk about Pittsburgh. Their record this year, 38, 32, and 12. 88 points. And much like last season, close. And again, the toughest place to be as a team is close to the playoffs, not quite playoffs. They had 91 points last year, 88 this year, 3-point difference. Very similar storyline, except that they had a good finish this year, and of course last year they backed out of the playoffs. So again, they're close. If you want to look at Pittsburgh and say, you know what, with the right changes they could be a playoff team next year, cool. If you want to look at this team and say, you know what, they're getting too old, it's not going to happen, you can make that argument as well. So I'll do the draft lottery odds first, so I don't forget, because old and all. 4.2% chance, or 3.2% chance, I should say, they move up to fourth, and so the earliest that Minnesota can draft is third. 14th, 94.7%. And I did see somebody getting snarky in the comments because I talked about how this draft class is not seen as being deep as last year's. I never said this year's draft class is bad. Just this year's draft class is not seen as being as transformational. And if people want to read into that as, oh, he's saying this draft class sucks. No, I'm not. At any rate, 15th, they have a 2.1% chance of drafting 15th. The only reason I mention the strength of the draft class is because some years the draft picks are not going anywhere. Last year, draft picks were seen as being really, really, really valuable because of how deep that class was. One that was seen as maybe being the deepest since 2015. 2015 was a ridiculous draft. This year's draft not being seen as star-studded as last year's, which, again, shouldn't be a controversial opinion, but if somebody wants to read into that, go, he's just saying all the prospects are going to be garbage out of this draft. Okay, no. I've even argued that even in drafts people have labeled as bad, you still get good players. It's just a matter of having good scouts. It may just be more difficult to find some of the key players, and some guys who maybe aren't getting as much attention in the draft class maybe end up being steals in later rounds. That being said, draft lottery odds mentioned, I don't have to worry about forgetting that this time. The coach is Mike Sullivan. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not Sullivan stays, and it's his decision. I think Sullivan stays. There's always that chance that during the summer something changes, but I don't think it will. Kyle Dubas, of course, is the GM for better and for worse, I think. Dubas has clearly got a vision that he's brought to Pittsburgh, and I think he kind of had orders as well that, hey, we want this team back in the playoffs. We want to contend because we got Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, and we got to keep this group together and try to get back to being a contender. And at this point with Pittsburgh, it feels like Detroit at the end, except that when Detroit fell out of the playoffs, they stopped trying to get back to being a contender. Pittsburgh, I don't think they're done trying. I get the feeling they're not done trying to get back into contention for a Stanley Cup. They were 18th in goals for this year. They were 15th in goals allowed. This is a team that, again, right near the middle of the pack in both goal scoring and goals against. Their playoff drought is now 2 seasons. And when I'm writing all this out, I thought, this is also very similar to San Jose. How San Jose all of a sudden wasn't a playoff team, but they still had this vision that, hey, it's not that long ago we were a contending team. We can probably get back there with the right moves. In some cases that can work, but usually when you look at hockey history, it doesn't. The aging process it happens. And so it's highly likely if they go about it the same way this year they did last year, we might be talking about a 3-year playoff drought. So they did finish the season 6-2-2. So if you're an optimistic Penguins fan that believes that, hey, this team could have made the playoffs and done something if they got there, that finish tells you, yeah, they had a good run at the end. The problem is they haven't got out of the first round when they have made the playoffs since 2018. 2018, they were the defending Stanley Cup champions. They got knocked out in the first round second round by the Washington Capitals, and then they lost in the first round. 2019 was against the Islanders. 2020, they lost the play-in round against Montreal. 2021, I'm trying to remember who beat them in 2021. Was it the Islanders again? So, yeah, the Penguins have not got out of the first round since 2018. So, even if they do get back into the playoffs, are they going to be a team that's dangerous come playoff time or not? So 6-2-2 in their last 10, good run, and Sidney Crosby, one of the best players in the history of the game. 42 goals, 52 assists, 94 points. Interestingly enough, though, this team had a bad power play throughout most of the season. It got overshadowed by the fact that their Pennsylvania cousins in Philadelphia had an abysmal power play, but Pittsburgh's wasn't much better. Malkin, 27 goals, 40 assists, 67 points. I'm going to say it. I think Malkin's lost a bit of a step. It happens to every player as they get older. I just don't know that Malkin's ever going to get back to the 80-plus point range. And so then you need somebody to replace those points you've lost. Brian Rust only played 62 games. Not the first time he's had an injury riddled season. 28 goals, 28 assists, 56 points. Very productive when in the lineup, but he did miss the 20 games. And then Erik Carlson, 11 goals, 45 assists, 56 points. And the other side of this, too, is that Crosby and Malkin didn't miss time with injury, but as players get older, that becomes more and more of a concern. And so can they go without injury next year? And if they do get injured, who steps into that role for them? It feels like Pittsburgh's depth probably isn't where you exactly want it to be in the event of a big name getting injured. So Erik Carlson, I mentioned at the bottom here. Normally I just do the top three scorers, but I figured we're going to want to talk about Carlson a bit. The 11 goals, 45 assists, 56 points. Probably a disappointment for him. Probably a disappointment for the Penguins as well. And I've talked about this before too, because we talk about Pittsburgh a lot, honestly. And Carlson's year in San Jose last year, where he had over 100 points, I think was in direct correlation with the fact that Brent Burns was gone and he was the guy. Going to Pittsburgh, obviously that's Letang's backyard. That's Letang's blue line. And so it does, to me, feel kind of somewhat similar with Carlson and Letang both being the top guy. And at times, they would try Carlson, go back to Letang, and it would click better with Letang in a position than for Carlson in that same spot. Because all of the players who've been Penguins for a while, they all know Letang's game. So, I mean, there's been rumors that maybe they're looking at moving Carlson. There's that crazy rumor maybe he goes back to Ottawa. No. But who knows what's going to happen this summer. They're going to need to figure out how to create a little bit of cap space if they're going to try to improve this team. The only player 22 years or younger to play a game for this team this year was Poulin. 3 games, no points. He has signed an extension with the team already. Is he ever going to be a regular in the NHL? I honestly don't know. A few years ago, I would have said, sure, why not? But right now, I don't know. I don't know if he's ever going to be a top 9 forward in the NHL. And then you get into the goaltending, and either the goaltending's good, you may be of the mind that Tristan Jarry's a good goaltender, or you may be of the mind that it's mediocre. 19-25-5 record for Jarry, 903 save percentage. They had a better record for Nedeljkovic, 18-7-7 with a 902 save percentage. Nedeljkovic is a UFA this summer, so we'll see what they do with their goaltending this summer. Age of the players, it feels like is a big storyline with Pittsburgh, so it has to get mentioned here. Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and Jeff Carter, who has retired, all 36 years of age or older and playing with the team this year. But then there's the 32 to 35-year-old group. And again, this is where players normally offensively are slowing down. You have Carlson, Smith, Eller, and Achari on that list. Riley Smith's addition, it was good early in the season. He tailed off production-wise as the year went along. And so I'm not sure exactly what the plan's going to be going forward for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I thought Eller had a nice bounce-back year for them, though. But again, what are you going to do going into next year? So on the way, they do have a few prospects that I felt like, I might as well mention here. Braden Yeager, a center, on his way up. Owen Pickering, a defenseman. And Joel Blomqvist, who is a goaltender, and I would figure Swedish, probably Joel. But either way, so you've got a forward, a defenseman, and a goaltender, but there's nobody here that I look at and say there's their next star. And with Pittsburgh, that's been the storyline, right? You have the Lemieux era, and then they go through a really rough time. Of course, Yager's a big part of that era too. And then they get Crosby and Malkin. So who are the next guys going to be? If Pittsburgh wins the draft lottery, they only draft 4th, though. So for anybody who's thinking, hey, if they get Celebrini, they can't. The only way they would get it is if they win the draft lottery, they get that number 4 pick, and then somehow finagle a deal to get the number 1 pick. But I don't know. I don't think the odds are there in their favor. So they're pending unrestricted free agents. Harkins, who was okay, but again, I don't think Harkins is going to stick around. Carter's retired, so Jeff Carter's final season. Nedeljkovic, we'll see if they bring him back. Puustinen, I thought was good, but again, if you're looking for more offensive punch, I don't know that Puustinen's the answer, but he's a hard worker. Hinostroza, I like Vinny Hinostroza, but I understand why he's been in the minors a lot the last couple of seasons. Zahorna, similar storyline. Zahorna at times can be a good fill-in. And Jack Rathbone. So if you're a Canuck fan and you're like, hey, when can we get Rathbone back in Abbotsford? My answer would be maybe this summer. Maybe the Canucks look to bring him back to put him back in Abbotsford. Who knows? We'll see. Pending restricted free agents, Bemstrom, who they picked up in the Nylander trade, which at the time looked like, well, it's 1-for-1. A struggling player for a struggling player makes sense. Nylander had a really good run with Columbus. Bemstrom did not have that same luck in Pittsburgh. Initially looked pretty good, but I don't know what the future is for Bemstrom as a member of the Penguins. And then there's Joseph, and I think P.O. Joseph is a good defenseman. Probably gets a decent raise this summer. I don't know how long that contract's going to be. My guess would probably be like 4, maybe 5 years. But in this day and age, it feels like every contract's 7 or 8 years. So who knows? But I think Joseph can be a decent defenseman. And this is definitely a team that I think their blue line's a bit underrated. They were 15th on the goals against department. So again, probably a little bit underrated defensively. So they do have an out with their draft pick that they traded for this year. It is top 10 protected, so in the event that they win the draft lottery and draft fourth, they get that draft pick for themselves. Otherwise, it's not their draft pick. And this is a team that needs to retool. They need to retool or rebuild. However you want to look at it, I think adding young players is important. I don't know if Kyle Dubas will do that this summer. One thing with Kyle Dubas, I'm starting to see this around the Leafs, and we're finally having this conversation is, what do you do when a general manager or just an organization has a plan that's not working and they won't deviate from it? And so while that's a conversation with Toronto, I think it could be a conversation with Pittsburgh as well. Again, this team hasn't won a round since 2018. Have they done a lot to, create a good future? Not really. They've been trying to, by trading out so many draft picks, trying to bring guys in, build it up, get back to being a contender, and that can hurt an organization long term. Vancouver, for instance, after 2011 and 2012, with finishing first overall in the NHL, when the team fell as quickly as they did, there seemed to be this belief that, hey, it's not that long ago this team was really good, so we can get back there again. And that can be harmful. I know it sounds like being positive is a good thing, but sometimes it's not. Crosby's contract ends next year. Again, he has an $8.7 million cap hit. And I've seen people saying, hey, Crosby at this point, he's not greedy. He'll probably stay at the $8.7 million cap hit. Maybe he does. But in the event that Sidney Crosby looks at the salary cap going through the roof and says, you know what? I'd like to get $11 million a year. I'll sign a 1-year contract extension worth $11.5 million. You cannot make an argument that he's not worth it. You can't. He has given this team a discount on that contract. It's a long contract, but it's definitely worked out to be a discount for Pittsburgh. So if he does say, I want to get paid $11 million, he absolutely should, considering the amount of money that's getting thrown around on players, and will get thrown around on players this summer as well. So keep an eye on that. It might be in Pittsburgh's best interest to get Crosby signed to an extension this July before we get into next season, because I think the asking price probably would just go up. Despite his age, I don't think it's going to matter. Crosby's one of the best two-way forwards in the game. So looking at contracts, and again, this is a team that has, according to Cap Friendly, $12,945,658 in cap space as of this July 1st. So there's some money there, but they might be able to free some more up. So Raquel's contract is $5 million a year until 2028. I don't think they've got the production from Raquel consistently for that contract to work for them long term. If they can offload that contract, I think they'll try. Riley Smith has 1 more year left at $5 million. Maybe that contract's attractive to a team that's looking to add some money that has some cap space. I'm thinking about Utah here as maybe being a landing spot for a contract, especially just for 1 year. That could work. And then Erik Carlson, $10 million cap hit with the Penguins. Of course, there's some retention by San Jose, not a lot. and that contract's till 2027. And again, the rumor's been out there that maybe they're going to move Carlson. Tristan Jarry, a $5.375 million cap hit until 2028. I think that's workable for him as the starter, but then the question I have to ask Penguins fans is, should he be the starter for this team until 2028? Or should they look in another direction? Should the fact that Nedeljkovic pushed him be concerning? That kind of thing. And then you've got Graves at $4.5 million till 2029. He finished the season on LTIR. And so there's a lot of question marks here for me with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it'll be interesting to see how those answers are navigated by management and what Kyle Dubas does. Because again, what they've been doing doesn't seem to be working, and so either you pivot and you change what your plan is, or you're likely going to have continued struggles. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And hey, thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.